Hello everybody, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today, I've been working on a watercolor painting from a photograph. I filmed it for my Patreon, and then I had shut off the camera and was working with kind of green washes, experimenting with what I can do to kind of bring things out. And now, I decided to turn the camera back on, and I decided to start experimenting with gouache on top of, I just sprayed up instead of down, wow. Experiment with gouache on top of this watercolor and try to kind of push it around. The thing is that I'm struggling with this is that the photo is, it's very green. And I would think that at this point, green is probably a painter's almost worst enemy, where there's just it's so much green, and you're trying to differentiate between it, and you're playing around with it. So, anywho, I decided that the next step would be to now play around with gouache on top of it. So I'm using Da Vinci brand gouaches. I'm not going to put out a whole bunch of different colors. I'm going to work with yellow, sap green. I have some black that I'll put out. We'll see if we wind up using it. An ultramarine, and then a white. And if I decide to grab some other colors, I'll let you know what they are. Now, this idea, and I'm not sure if I had mentioned it because I was pouring out colors while talking, that I kind of have the idea of kind of now pushing things lighter, and in order to do that, kind of get more opaque rather than lifting and whatnot. Anyway, I figured it'd be fun, and let's experiment and see what happens. I hadn't used my gouache palette in a long time, and I know gouache is a little bit harder to reconstitute than regular watercolor. So let's start off just to see what our yellow looks like on top of it. And we'll see how it dries. We'll probably use the white to push it in the direction of kind of just a brighter highlights. And the black would go into darker areas. But one thing that's just now occurring to me, and so this is going to be a speculatory video, and hopefully you'll find it interesting. One thing that occurs to me is that if we put in the highlights, put in the high chroma stuff, and we go with the lighter tonal values, how that would look against this previous background without doing a dark gouache, because that would kind of push it forward, I think. Maybe some select areas will use that. Or if we should do it overall. So just a couple ideas. So I'm trying to vary my density here. I am using the same color over and over again, so that could become repetitive. But hopefully coming back in with different variations of it will help. And I'll use a little bit of side brush texture techniques here. Could water it down a little bit, just so we can kind of get a look at what it looks like. And I guess pay attention to the areas that I apply this so we could see how it dries. Also, if you want to check out the original build-up, it's on the Patreon page. I would love for you guys to check out my Patreon, the Etsy. Those are ways to help support the channel. and you know, art supplies and whatnot. Also added onto that, you are, regardless if you're a patron or not, you are more than welcome to follow along with any one of these tutorials, anything that I do. And you're more than welcome to sign your name to it, to sell it, to give it away, whatever you would like to do. So I want you guys to be successful. And sometimes I think with art, selling something or giving it away and it hanging in somebody's house really helps build that confidence. And you don't have to do that. You know, there's a lot of people that paint just for their enjoyment. They don't sell, they might give it away, they might donate it, things like that. But I'm just letting you know that that option's out there. I think that was Hammy or Harrison calling for Mom. That's the cats, and that's how they go. They go, Mom. For those of you that are cat people or dog people, are they vocal? Do they almost say words and call out to y'all? Stronger concentration of the yellow. So a little bit of things about gouache. Sometimes I think they have a different binder. Usually it's the same binder, but there are some that have, I think, are acrylic based and all that, but they can't be re-wetted. These are pretty standard gouache. It was prominent in, I think, the graphics arts industry. You'd be able to paint it and it would scan really well. But I don't think it was really archival or light fast at the time. And then now I think it's more just as an art form of its own. It was used during the Victorian era. I believe gouache comes from either a French word or Italian word meaning mud. And the pigment isn't as finely ground as watercolor, so it I believe it sits on top of the paper as opposed to really sinking in. But you could do washes of it and treat it like watercolor. And if you don't have different colors, you could experiment with just getting the white first and mixing the white into your regular watercolors. That I believe is called body color, was originally the term back in the Victorian era. I'd read that somewhere on probably handprint.com, which is a rabbit hole of information. This is the white. Somebody messaged me on Instagram. You guys are always welcome to message me on any social media or anything like that if you ever have any questions, comments, or anything along those lines. They asked what I thought about the Da Vinci paints, the gouache specifically. I really like Da Vinci brand. I think that they have good prices, good quality. I'm not sponsored by them in any way, but hey, Da Vinci brand, or anybody that knows them, if you guys want to send some stuff my way, I'd gladly accept it and go over it and kind of show it on camera. Anyway, that being said, they had asked what I thought about the gouache. And I said, you know, I really like it. The price point is good. Because I think the person was getting into gouache. Price point was good. A lot of the pigments are light fast. What else? I'm umming a lot. Sorry. I just enjoy the brand. I felt like there was no need to really delve into other ones. My only complaint, do kind of like a compliment sandwich, but it'll probably be like an open sandwich. So there's that first part. So then the other side is that the white isn't as opaque as I think you'd want it to be. Somebody, if you search on Google, there's somebody that did a comparison of the different gouache brands and the whites, and Da Vinci wasn't as opaque as the other ones. Let's see, why don't we try a little dry brushing back here. The bad thing or the good thing, it was something that I had alluded to earlier, where if we were to use the black, is that it could potentially push it forward in the picture plane, that opacity. So that's just one thing I'm a little concerned about. Let's go ahead and get some black going, just to see. I mentioned in the previous video that there might be some sort of rule or trick somewhere that says put your darkest darks near your lightest lights to make it pop. There's a whole bunch of different tricks and tips that you'll learn as you go paint, as you get along painting. Remember in college, I think the painting professor had said you'll eventually get to the point where you'll learn so many tricks that you'll forget more than you remember. So we'll see how that dries. This may help us create closer foliage. I scraped some of these areas with a razor blade earlier. And of course, if you use a razor blade whenever you're painting, be careful. Use all possible safety measures. Let's mix a little bit with this yellow. Let me pause to do a dry off so we can see how things are coming along. All right, I did a partial dry off. I am pleased with the direction we're going in. I'm going to use some gouache in this spot. So I'm going to take some ultramarine, and I can mix it with a raw sienna or a burnt sienna or a light red oxide, something like that, to get a dark. I don't know if I have light red oxide in a Venetian red. I'll put out some burnt umber and play around in this spot with the shadows. Someone who did interesting shadow work, whenever it's shadows, I always mention Ian Campbell. I don't think he has a YouTube or anything like that, but he is just really makes phenomenal scenes in watercolor, fast and loose too, with light coming through a tunnel of trees and it casting this mottled, M-O-T-T-L-E shadows. And he does a really good job of it. It's something that I don't usually do often. So I'll just try to emphasize more burnt sienna as we get closer to warm it up, and more ultramarine as we push back. Someone else who has been working on shadows and those paths lately, Mr. Guy from Down Under, he had sent me some it was acrylic work that he was doing. And it looks like a path to a beach, or at least it was a pathway. And he had done that same thing, that speckled shadow. Seems to be an important thing in a lot of people's work, and I understand why. Maybe going too dark here. Maybe lift that a little bit. I'm going to mix the burnt sienna and ultramarine together to go on the darker side of things. And I could do another layer, another tree. Since we're doing the gouache, why not? Let it start popping out, creating another layer. Throw some black in there. I put out sap green. We haven't played with that yet. Size. A few of these guys. Make sure they sit in place. Grab the #1 rigger. See. Now the big thing is how dark tonally will this dry? And if we can get that nice dark, the black will be worth it. All right, I mentioned sap green, so let's grab some sap green. See how that plays around. I might have some Viridian, but I really don't use greens. Maybe at the end, or if it's just a kind of 2-color combination painting, like the phthalo green and the quinacridone rose. Beautiful combination for a 2-colored painting. All right, let's some greens on top. Might even grab the hake brush and texture it in. Or grab some of our sap green and our white. Let's see. There we go. Got a little variation that'll help switch things up a little bit. Variation back here too. let me do a pause. We'll do a dry off. Okay, so I think I'll do a little bit more playing around. One thing I thought about was right in here how blended the shadows are. And I'm not sure if I want to try to push them back in other directions or maybe create more texture in them. Then another thing that I had thought about was just playing with white gouache back here just to see how that affects it. This might push it too far in the picture plane, because remember a few moments ago I went darker with it, but I could probably come in whiter here and that'll fight against that to help it pull forward. Let me see how that looks through the camera. It's very emphasized compared to the original picture. That emphasis may be acceptable since now it's full-on experimental mode. Let's go as white as we can right in here. And then even go white right in here. See how that pushes things. Might give it a more painterly effect. You know, usually you kind of want to emphasize some things whenever you're painting, exaggerate things. And this exaggeration might be what it needs. But don't be timid. Every so often I talk about how I had a professor in college who, in oil painting and all that, he would come along and scrape right on your canvas, use the palette knife, scrape, he'd make marks right on it. And it felt devastating at first, but you got to realize that a lot of your paintings are just going to be practice, 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 practice. So don't baby the painting. Use every painting as an experiment. And you're going to see things that you like, things that you don't like, and it'll start, figuring out and working for you. Like for me, I'm thinking that maybe we do a dry off or try to glaze a gray over this. In fact, let's take some ultramarine blue mixed with a little bit of burnt sienna, just glaze back. And just push back and forth and experiment and see how things are working. Unfortunately, one of the things that contradicts what I've been saying is that you will eventually get muddy with watercolor painting, going back and forth. But you're learning what happens. Just grab some green. Oh, see, it was too much, but it's okay. Let's take the hake. pass a little bit over here. On that note, I'm going to pause to dry. I'm going to put a mat over it, and we'll see how it looks. Well, I'm really glad that we did this experiment. With it, you know, there's a lot of brushstrokes, painterly effects that we did, expressionist type of markings. We saw how the white interacts, how the black interacts, and how we can get the yellow to pop out better than if we were to go over the dark with just watercolor yellow. So there was a lot learned from this one. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching the whole thing. And please like, subscribe, and follow, and consider supporting on Patreon and Etsy. All right, you all take care. Have a great day. Bye.